Hello, world, and welcome to International Media, Broadcast Media TV. We're undergoing some branding, so excuse me while I stumble through our new name here, but it's International Broadcast Media. And today we are the World Edition, and we are coming to you from around the world to share with you around the world all the great and wonderful things. Today is November 27th, 2020. And it's the day after we celebrated Thanksgiving here in the United States. And it's also known as Black Friday to most of us here in the United States. And I don't know where they came up with that name, Black Friday, but it was in the top of the news all day today, how it is actually helping the economy recover in the shopping. But with us today, we have two special guests in the house. We have Steve Rao from the Mooresville, North Carolina area. Good morning, Steve.
Good morning, Kimberly.
How are you doing today?
Doing great. How are you? Well, full from
Fine.
the last night, but other than that, I'm all right.
Oh dear. Hold on just a minute. We have somebody else all the way from Switzerland. Good morning or good evening, Ben.
Good morning, Kimberly and Steve. Good morning.
How are you doing today in Switzerland?
Oh, we are getting ready for the weekend. It's the evening. I'm just waiting for my first beer of the day.
Oh, the first beer. we don't go there this morning.
Yeah.
But definitely, you got to relax and chill out, especially in this day and time. I got to ask you, do you guys have what we call Black Friday here in the United States? No.
No, not that I know of. It's only before the Christmas we have, but that's in December. There's the Black Friday, Black Saturday. But that's
Okay.
just for the Christmas shopping.
Yeah,
But
that's what it's for. It's for launching the Christmas shopping doors, right? But they
yeah,
have all those crazy specials, and I've never been. I don't like crowds like that, and it's like a feeding frenzy. And I would just prefer waiting until after that's done and the store's clean again. And but it's pretty big here in the United States. It sets what they call the market pace, right, of how we're going to do in the economy with the stores. It's not where it has always been, but they were really happy with the results. But anyway, so that's one of the things that is going on here in the United States today. But something I read in the news, and maybe you guys would like to join me on this because I thought it was pretty curious, is, South Korea, pretty disciplined country, I gather. But they've executed two people and they've closed off the ocean for fishing. And I continued reading on just to find out what is really going on. Sometimes news can misconstrue things, but they're closing off the ocean for fishing for fear that we will spread the virus in the salt ocean water. I thought that was interesting. And I was wondering, has anyone heard any research on the virus being able to become contagious and spreadable in the ocean?
Not to my knowledge, but I'm not a scientist either,
yeah,
so
me neither.
I don't know. I haven't heard that. Yeah, I read a lot too. I haven't seen any studies about that, but you never
Yeah.
know.
Well, it
It
was
has
in the
mutated a
AP,
couple of times.
right. It's in the AP news this
Yeah.
morning, discussing, the top of the line was two people were executed. And then, of course, fishermen have been banned from the sea. And I go, oh, well, I wonder why. So that's curious to me because I don't think anybody's going to read that far down into the article. So you're not
Yeah.
going to have a lot of conversation about that. But it would be interesting to find out from other researchers and possibly the WHO and, our leaders in research. Is there any truth to the findings of what South Korea has mentioned? So maybe you guys can help me spread out the research and talk to the right people. So, but what else is
Yeah.
going on? We've got Trump still not
Yeah.
conceding.
Well,
I
yeah.
know.
Well, the good news, I guess I'll take the first stab here. I mean, he's still
Yeah, go
not
ahead.
conceding, but he did finally say yesterday that he would, if the Electoral College certifies the election for Joe Biden, that he would move out of the White House. He did say that, yes, I would do that. However, he qualified it with, this is far from over. But most of his lawsuits
Yeah.
at this point have been thrown out by the courts. So it doesn't look very likely. But he's really being a sore loser. And I was thinking this morning on a run, it sets a bad example for our kids. I'm always out there telling our kids, do your best, be a good sport. Watching tennis greats like Federer and Nadal play 5-set battles and just shake each other's hand and give each other a hug and for Grand Slam championships. And then you see this. So I hope the president does eventually just concede it. I think it would just be good for the country. But anyway, that's where we are, Kimberly.
Wow. It is kind of unusual. Usually most presidents, they will concede quietly and move on. I mean, there are better things that you can do with your time to do what's right for the people, which is something that we have noticed hasn't been the agenda of our top government in quite some time. So Ben, what are your thoughts on the impact of what we're going through here in the United States with our election? What's the impact for your country?
I think in Europe, we are quite very worried because this is setting such a bad precedence. I mean, the only people happy are people like Erdogan from Turkey or Viktor Orban from Hungary. And of course, Putin from Russia. But in a democratic nation, especially in that case, we are speaking about so-called democracy like in Turkey and Hungary. It is setting a precedence that this can happen even in what we call the head of the Western democracy, the country which leads the Western democracy, who has been the leader of the Western democracy last 70 years. And
Right.
and now, I mean, I don't think I blame Trump very much for it. I'm a bit more uncertain, and I think that is the same that is valid for many Europeans. We are very uncertain about how the Republican Party could do this. It's a party of patriots. It's a party with a grand legacy and a grand history. How can this party support this man? And that, I think, will be a question more for Steve, who is in the middle of it, and yourself. And I'm just sitting on the other side of the ocean.
Well, I think that's a great question. And I think for those of you watching around the world, I think what we need to remember is that Donald Trump won election on the campaign of making America great again. And the message was very much similar to Ronald Reagan's campaign in 1980, Shining City on a Hill. And he really was able to get Democrats to cross over and vote Republican in rural areas, largely because of displaced manufacturing jobs in the Rust Belt states. So that was a big part of his strategy. Somehow along the way, the disruption in the Republican mantra began, getting away from low taxes and less regulation to breaking a lot of our agreements with countries around the world, dropping out of the World Health Organization, dropping out of trade agreements, taking on China with the China war, with a trade war, and then eventually going after the press, and now delegitimizing the election and saying that it's false news, fake news, and this whole notion of illiberal democracy, where you're starting to see nationalism take place all across the world. So, but this is the party of Trump. That's what they're calling it. And 71 million people voted for him. So I don't know what is going to happen. It is a bit alarming that you have people like Mitt Romney, former presidential candidate, U.S. Senator now, former governor of Massachusetts, very reasonable fellow, ran the Olympic Committee years ago. He's not a supporter of Trump. So I don't know whether eventually it'll just be that they're going to have to find another bearer of their party, standard bearer, I guess, right? But it's still, 71 million people. That's a lot of people that still support Donald Trump. And I'm trying to figure out what the why behind that.
Yeah. I mean,
Kimberly, your thoughts?
Kimberly.
Well, my thoughts. Well, I think that we are still divided country by Democrat versus Republican, no matter what. That there are just people that are diehard Democrat. They were born that way. It has been the family feud for, to me, 200 years or however many years that we've been doing this. It's an old system that needs to move on and grow up, and we need to get out of political parties, because it's, to me, it's the same World Series over and over and over every 4 years, the same two teams, and it doesn't change. And then I can almost predict what's going to happen the minute Biden goes into office, because we saw this with Obama, we saw this with Trump. I think we've seen it previous. The government's going to shut down because they can't get along. Yeah. They can't agree on anything. So we're going to go through 2 or 3 months without, government employees wondering whether they're going to get a check, and we're all suffering as it is. So there's, a lot of troubled waters when you have such a divided country. And, and our states are divided too. None of our states abide by the same laws. They don't. Mm-hmm. You know this.
Yeah.
And it's such a divided country. I don't know how you can call it. I mean, I'm not being rude about it. It's been a concern of mine for many, many years. How can you call it a United States when our state laws are not even uniting us? So there is so much going on that we need to, I think, remorph our government system. But we're still young compared to Europe. I see Europe handling things a whole lot better. I have to remind myself we're babies in the game. So
I agree to everything you said, Kimberly. Only partially. One place I don't agree is that the parties have remained same the last 200 years. If you look, at least to my understanding, the Republican parties were generally led and voted by a lot of elites, highly educated people. I think now it has changed quite a lot. Now the educated, the college, I was reading some of the statistics. The most of the college educated people in America today are for the Democrats, not for the Republicans. So somehow the party base has changed of the Republicans. From educated elites, it has come down to what you said, the Midwest or the places where people are not very highly educated. So the support base, I think, has changed. Mm-hmm. And in Europe, what you mentioned is very true. It's and especially being a history geek like myself. If you look at it more on a macro level, we have had this. So when a political leader comes, hijacks a conservative party, sort of, slowly becomes the leader of the conservative party, wins the election, becomes the leader, starts changing all the institutional heads with his cronies, with his lawyers, just rewards, keeps a couple of the old conservative party heads, rewards them very well with power, and blames everything on everybody else. We have seen this 70 years ago, and that scares me. Because I'm sure you know who I'm implying. Adolf Hitler came to power exactly the same way. I know America is still not there, but that's the side. If maybe not Trump 1, maybe the Trump 2 or the Trump 3.
Right.
Yeah. So, I think that's a good point. Yeah.
That is, when you look at history, we can sit there and go, wow, we've kind of played this out before, right? How do we evolve out of that same turnover? But again, you are right. Our base for the parties has changed, but I think it's because our education, access to education had changed over the years. And so you found more and more people in the rural areas having more access to higher education that they didn't have, a long time ago. So I think allowing more people to have access to higher education probably changed that baseline greatly. But when we look at the stress that all of our leaders are either under or causing, I got to wonder what's going on globally, right? Like you've got so much agitation going on, and it's curious to me of what's going to be the next big move. It's like the leader from South Korea, Kim. He was sitting there saying, "We don't want to make any big decisions right now because we don't know what the U.S. president's going to do." Mm-hmm. So, you've got everybody kind of, unfortunately, putting their lives or everything on sidelines, waiting for other people to make their decisions. And I know, we're not the only country electing new officials. I mean, this has been going on all year in other countries. So,
Yeah, absolutely. And I think part of the problem is that it's what a lot of what we're seeing, Ben, is the urban rural divide in America, which Kimberly and I see in our state of North Carolina. So you're right. The rural areas, less educated, more of the Trump base, lost their jobs. They feel like America needs to get back to having manufacturing done. We've lost a lot of manufacturing in this country. And the more urban areas, which are more diverse, where we live in Research Triangle, 40% of our town where I live in, and I lead in Morthville, is from India. 40%. Tremendous
yeah.
diversity, universities. So, that's one factor is this urban rural divide. We have two separate states within North Carolina. There's literally two separate countries within the United States. The second thing is the amount of money that's going in these elections. The fact that you have to have $1 billion or more to win the presidency, to win a seat in our General Assembly in North Carolina, easily $500,000, to win a U.S. Senate seat, $250 million for our U.S. Senate race in North Carolina. So money is the thing. And the third factor is America is becoming older and more diverse. And what I mean by that is when my parents immigrated here in the 1960s, 60% of the United States was actually a little bit was younger. And today in India, 50 years later, it's the opposite. 65% of India is under 35, under the age of 35. In America, it's gone the other way because healthcare is keeping people alive longer, right? So we also see a cultural war. Things like LGBT rights, gay marriage, these things have finally now come to the forefront and are accepted by our courts. But there are many people in the country that are just not used to that change. They may be 70, 80. And how ironic is it that when John F. Kennedy was elected president, everyone in his cabinet was 40 years or younger. And now we have a president that's 77 and people in the cabinet are 70. So I found that to be very interesting, right, Kimberly? I was actually thinking about that. No one talks about that. Now, is that because people are living longer and 70 is the new 60 and 60 is the new 50 and 50 is new 40? So maybe that's good because we want people with some wisdom, right? I just want to throw that out there because that's something we never talk about very much.
Wisdom would be a strong word if you look at what our generation has done to the planet, to the environment and everything. I have more trust on the younger generation. They are so much ahead of us.
Well, they're so considerate. I think we've been through a lot. And it's so funny you would say how it's kind of changed. And one of the vice presidents of the Federal Reserve has, children that are my age, my children's age. And he called me one day and he goes, I think the age 20 is the new 60. And I think it's well, two things. For some reason, they seem to be older souls. Like they seem to understand more about what we're going through. And this was about 2 years ago when he told me that. But it was funny because I watched my son come in one morning for breakfast and he shuffles over to get his coffee and he, shuffles over and I'm like, I think he's right. 25 is the new 60.
But
go ahead.
But Steve, you mentioned it so true because one of my old friends, he was the senator of US. He passed away, Senator McCain. And so my son, he was then 10 or something. So we disagreed about a lot of points. I think we disagreed on 80% of the points, but that's the fun part of it. Right. And my son, once he was 8 or 10 years old and he was chatting with him and he said, well, you see, I like John F. Kennedy. He was the best president you guys ever had.
I listened to him. It was amazing. Yeah. Well, it was but I just found that interesting because I did some special editions in my newsletter on JFK, remembering JFK, but we often forget that Robert McNamara had just left Ford Motor Company. He was Secretary of Defense. He was, I think 37 years old. Dean Acheson, Pierre Salinger. I mean, every single person in the White House was under 40 years old. But now in America, we have a presidential candidate that's 78 that's saying that he may run again. We never talked about that, but Trump said he'll probably run again. If Biden runs again, you're going to have an 80-year-old versus an 83-year-old. And some of these cabinet heads are a little bit older. Nothing wrong against being 60. Like I said, I'm 50 now, and I love this thing of 50 is the new 40, so I'm really 40.
Yeah.
But that's I just don't know whether it's experience. But we've seemed to, when Kennedy was president, he said the torch has been passed to a new generation of Americans, and he really was passing the torch. And so that may be one answer, is getting more young people involved in
Hmm.
politics, getting more young people in the Congress, in the legislatures, which might eventually just change the direction of the country, because it's eventually going to age out, right? I mean, I think the average age of and more women are going into Congress now, the highest
Yeah.
percentage ever. I think more women are going in the U.S. Congress this year than ever, which is a good thing.
Also the countries at this moment, we have, I think, 3 countries which is being led by women who are in their 30s. All 3 of them are doing far better in economics,
Oh yeah,
in social,
oh yeah,
even against
yeah.
Corona, they are doing better. So
Hmm.
A little nurturing
Absolutely.
doesn't hurt, I mean, nothing against men, but they just have a different approach to things. Mothers going, woman nature is just going to be more nurturing, and they're going to
Oh
be a
yeah,
little
oh
more
yeah.
cautious. But women were taught different in school, how to budget things differently, and so it's a different mindset. But I agree. We've seen a change in where women are taking more leadership roles, but I think that with the older cabinet that we have right, have been having, I think it's just because we allow them to be there so long. But it's like you said, Steve, it costs a couple $100 million to $1 billion to run for office,
yeah.
and I think we need to eliminate that. First off, that needs to go. And I think that everybody should be given the exact same amount of platform speaking, and exact same amount of time for media. And the people pick the whatever list of candidates, and they run for president. I would like to do away with Democrat and Republican, but that's not going to happen. But I think we need to do away with, okay, he gets to raise 10 million, he gets to raise 100 million. That needs to go, and we
Yeah.
need to evolve it to a more equal platform. You have 10 people standing up there, 10 people speak. You maybe have a few debates, and then you let the country vote on this same day. I am so sick of the primaries where we're the last to get to vote in the primaries. So by the time the primaries get to us, all the people I like are gone. They're
Hmm.
just voted gone. North Carolina
Yeah,
never gets the opportunity to vote for the people in the primaries. We're left with, I hate saying it, the scraps. So
Hmm.
I think it all should be one day. Even if we're doing primaries first, I think it should be
Yeah.
all one day vote.
yeah,
And that's the only way we're going to equalize it.
yeah. I
And
know. Right.
But
so
I'm also not I'm not jealous of Joe Biden.
Yeah,
He is coming into a hornet's nest, which is so much worse. I mean, if you remember the financial crisis, this is the economy collapsed with 1%. You remember how many tens or I think hundreds of million jobless, unemployment, and everything. Now we have an economic crimp of 4.2% global. He is he is coming, and of course Trump
yes.
will take all the credit and he will get all the blame. But this
yes.
is what he's becoming the president of. So I'm very curious
I mean, if you remember the
if
financial
Trump will come back much
Yes,
more stronger.
I know.
Yeah, it is definitely
Well, I think that real quickly,
mess.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, the other thing before I have a good point on that, but the other thing to realize is the number of independent voters in America today. So in our home state of North Carolina, 42% of the voters are independent. They don't affiliate with a party. And I think that's going to be very interesting moving forward as America
Mhm.
continues with younger people. Is what's going to happen? Do we need a third party? But in terms of the president elect Biden, you are certainly right. He really has his work cut out for him. So I think
Mhm.
what I've heard recently is that he's calling every foreign leader. So when he became the vice president of the United States, he became very familiar with all the world leaders. So apparently he knows
Yeah.
60 world leaders by first name, and he has their
Mhm.
cell phone, and he's calling every single one of them right now. He's
Wow.
going to get back in the World Health Organization. He's reaching back out to NATO. He wants to get back into some trade agreements. He's trying to
Yeah.
thaw out relations with China, with Taiwan. He's just spoke with Benjamin Netanyahu in Israel. figuring out how to deal with Iran and the Iran nuclear deal. So you're going to see some normalcy return if you're anywhere around the world. Here's the good news: you're going to see some normalcy return to the U.S. foreign policy, which is a good thing, right? And I think his strategy is going to be getting control of the pandemic, and then hoping that this vaccine is successful, bringing down the rates of infection, and then hopefully it'll be a stronger recovery, right? Then then just staying like this, so jobs will start coming back. We can only hope and pray, because all of this, anywhere around the world you're listening, we're all in this together. So the U.S. economy does better, it's better for Europe, better for India, better for, so that's my thought on it. But he's working very hard, apparently. He's taking this very seriously. So I just hope he can put the past behind him and get moving.
No, I completely agree to that, but I think the scenario he's facing is quite extremely horrible, and I don't know how much
very terrible
how do you say it, resources he has to fight this. You are talking about the economical crimp of 4.2%, global economical crimp. That's mean tens of millions of jobs lost, which are not coming back tomorrow, which may take years to generate.
2%.
And this will create much more polarization in the US society, which, if Trump too comes back in 2024, it gives him a far bigger, and that worries me.
Yes, it does. Well, and here's the thing: Trump is probably going to, and I mean, maybe we can get David K. Johnson to join us one morning to discuss about this, because he has written about Trump several times and has followed him for years. But the thing is that maybe he'll just lose steam. And I'm not talking about physically, but maybe he'll just find something else that he's passionate about. It's kind of hard to concede a loss of this scale. And, because a lot of times most presidents, they get reelected. And, that's got to be a hard blow to, I hate saying it, his ego. But
exactly. I was going to say the same.
Good, we're thinking all the same. But what I like to think about is that moving forward, we'll make some drastic changes. Like you said, it's a big mess to clean up right now. I wouldn't want to be in Biden's shoes. I don't know. Going to get cleaned up. Well, I think Steve's having a little difficulty. We'll give him a minute to fix it. But I don't know what they're going to do first. Biden says he's got all of these plans. I trust that he does, because, he was our vice president at one time. He has worked in the Senate. I have watched him work on policies and laws that are good for humankind. Like he really had a genuine passion for saving women who were victims of domestic violence. He put in place the first laws for that, and he stayed on top of it. So I'd like to believe that whatever he's bringing to the table is going to be good for mankind. It's not just going to be good for a political party. And I'm hoping that when he does this, that it will change the mindset. But it's like you said, if you've got like shenanigans, as we call them, right? Shenanigans going on by a big person who has a lot of money, and all they're going to do is just cause problems. That's not healthy. And this is what I kept saying. If Trump had focused on the greater good of us,
it would have been different.
Right. I would have probably voted for him if he had focused all his energies not on campaigning, but doing his job, making sure stimulus packages were issued, making sure that the stimuluses that went to the wrong people were taken care of, because we had a lot of big companies that got the stimulus package and they just sat on the money. So I think if he had focused more on the greater good of mankind, making sure that we had the PPE that we needed, making sure that the medical industry, and he said he did, but I saw a lot of twittering that said he didn't. So, but one thing I do know is that they spent $26 billion paying the Army to make sure that the vaccine gets deployed. So he was doing some things. So I don't know if that was necessary. I think I would have given $27 billion to the doctors, and deploy the shots that way. I don't know why we had to give it to the Army. That kind of scares me a little bit. But in all essence, if he had done things for the greater good of us, like you even said, some countries they manage this whole situation without a lot of problems.
Mm-hmm.
And go ahead.
No, I was just thinking, I remember President Obama because I'm a fan of him. He was amazing. But one of the mistakes he made in his first term, and I sincerely hope Biden doesn't make it, is that to bring the country together, he made a lot of compromises on his own ideas and went out of the way to fulfill the requirements or the wishes of the opponent parties. And in this case, in case of Biden, it will be the Republican Party. He went out of his way to please them and bring them back to the camp in the idealist or in the thought of bringing national unity. But that can result in compromises of his own principles,
Right.
or compromises of his own promises he makes to his voters. And I sincerely hope that he doesn't make this mistake, because this will bite him back later on, not today, but 4 years back from further from here. It will, and it most will likely will bite him back. So I sincerely hope that he doesn't make this mistake, because President Obama made this mistake in his first term also.
I think,
Yes.
yeah, that's a great point. I think, Kimberly, though, just to make a quick point, I think if you look at his early cabinet appointments, I think it's proof that he is leading a little bit more towards the center to appease to those folks that didn't vote for him. Because, for example, there's been pressure mounting on him to make Bernie Sanders labor secretary. It doesn't look like that's going to happen. There was pressure for Elizabeth Warren to be his Treasury Secretary. That didn't happen. And some of these other picks are a little bit more of kind of the mainstream, where I think he realizes he'll get the Republican support. I think he realizes that he won with a broad array of support. But you're right. I think the next next 100 days or less will be very important. Will he pack the court? I think that's something we're not talking about with the Supreme Court. I think if he does that, then he's really in danger of it backfiring. I think we should have a U.S. Supreme Court of 9. Let's say he packs the court, then Republicans win again in a few 4 years. Then, I mean, we're going to have a court very high. So I think some of these things, I agree with you, Ben. I think he's going to, and what's Kamala Harris going to do? I mean, she's a progressive. She's going to really have to do the dance. Coming from California, been a progressive U.S. senator. Now, what is she going to do? And this is what happened with Obama. You know, the black community criticized that he, as the first black president, didn't do enough.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So I feel even worse for her that she's in a no-win situation, really. Right. She's just going to have to do the right thing and support the president.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So
She is in a tough spot because, and I agree with Ben, when you compromise your convictions in order to appease the opponent side, you can pretty much cut your throat. So the idealism is to try to bring both worlds together under peace talks, right? But you're still, when you do peace talks, you're always going to have to compromise some of your convictions, regardless of what you know in your heart is right or wrong. And this is what I tell people. It would be different if Biden had never served his country before. If he had never served higher office before, I could definitely understand the concerns. But when you're looking at the elements that we're looking at today, I just think that he truly cares about us. If you go look at the laws that he's put in place, and that's what I tell people, you know what, that's hard to do. That's very, very hard to implement some of the laws that he put in place, but also continue implementing them. He didn't just build them and walk away when they needed changing. You know, because as time changes, sometimes laws need to be tweaked. He would go back and tweak them. So I just find that very admirable. It's not like he's just going to walk away from something. He's going to make sure it's fixed. And, you know, I think I'm going to put a little bit of faith in that he's going to make things right. But the problem is our country is so divided. It's just going to be a push. But I think his cabinet is going to have his back. And that's important.
I think,
that's really important.
I agree. And I think that, you know, he just may be the right man for the job at this time in our nation's history. he does have the experience, Kimberly. I think that's a good point. Having been a U.S. Senator for 36 years, having been the Vice President for 8 years, he understands the legislative process. He still has relationships across the aisle with Republicans in the Senate. He was close friends with John McCain. He was close friends with Orrin Hatch. He's close to Mitt Romney. He has relationships not only with Democrats, but Republicans, right? He knows world leaders.
Mhm.
He understands how to deal with pandemics because he was dealing with the bird, well, not the bird flu, but I think it was the other
SARS.
swine flu, right?
SARS.
SARS,
Yeah.
SARS flu,
SARS.
right?
Yeah.
So I think these things do matter, and I think with President Trump, the one thing we can learn about his presidency was he just didn't know how to be the president. I think when push comes to shove, being the president of a nation is different than running a real estate business.
Yeah.
He didn't have to build teams. He didn't have to build coalitions. He was a reality TV guy. He's a great showman. He's a
Yep.
great salesman, right? The art of the
Mhm.
deal, right? But the art of the deal is different than governing a nation. And then when
Yep.
you had COVID hit, then I think it was out of control. And I totally agree with Kimberly that he really did have a chance to come in as a businessman who beat every well-known Republican to actually get things done. If I had been the president, I would have said, his inaugural address, when I remember watching that 4 years ago, was like, ha, 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 I won. And I would have just said, look, I rebuilt the New York City skyline working together. Let's dream big. And even if he had just come in there, he could have done things that no president had ever been able to do. And even just served one term because,
Mhm.
he had a great business career. He's done all these things. And I think he just went too far and he lost. But I think Biden will bring the experience that the country needs and the world needs right now. And I think, Ben, that's what I'm hearing from the world is they want someone in the White House in the United States that's bringing experience to the job.
Yeah. And
Emily,
trust.
I don't know if you agree with me or not, but yeah.
Yeah.
But
Only one point I just wanted to add to Steve is that the friends of Joe Biden you mentioned or you named in the Republican Party are today the black sheeps of the Republican Party.
yes, they are.
Yeah, I know.
Unfortunately, you can't sit there and do the right things. You're kind of darned if you do and darned if you don't. If you know in your heart something's right, whether you're Republican or Democrat, and you reach across the aisle to do the right thing for humanity or the right thing for your country, you're just going to be blasted for doing that, even though you know in your heart it's right. That's truly why I just don't get into politics. People have asked me to run time and time again. I choose not to because I can fight what I believe in a whole lot better for this side of the track.
Yeah.
And maybe have somebody's back and research the agenda and not be caught in the compromises. But I just wouldn't have the tolerance in politics. I want to get things done. I don't want to sit there and I'm too much of a business person. Ben, you're like this, right? Here's the agenda. Let's work it out. Well, this isn't okay. Let's whiteboard it. So you can't do that in politics, right? It's either this way or this way. There is no let's board it. Oh, we have to pivot. There's constant. Ben, you know this, right?
I think it's a little bit different in Europe because in Netherlands, when I was young and I was in politics, I still love politics, is that it was like what you mentioned, running a business. You went there for your ideology. You went there because you believed in something and you want to do something. And you had your own agenda. You said, I have to do this, this, and this. You told it to your voters and you worked exactly as you said it. Today, we live in a completely different world. Today we say not what we believe in or what we want to do, but we say what the voter wants to hear from us. Exactly. And the more you say it, the more votes you get. So I think the world has changed a bit in the last 20 years.
So it's the same in your country as it is in ours, that a majority of the time the leaders are just telling us what we want to hear. And at the end of the day, we end up with things that don't get accomplished very well. But that's interesting. I always loved law, right? And to me, I'm starting to see as I get older that it's more about the policies to me right? It's more about the policies we put in place that are for the greater good of mankind. And the reason why I figured this out was when you run a company, a lot of times, if something's not right or somebody's not doing something right, unfortunately, they might get fired. Or what you do is you figure it out and you fix it. But when you're running a country, that doesn't seem to happen anymore. It's too much fighting. It's his way or highway, So, but what I learned is that you fix things by changing the policies sometimes of the company, or you fix things by fixing the process and the procedures, but they don't do that in politics. Yep. So I believe if we ever get to a system where we can focus on policies and not people in the office, that's going to be a definite change. I would love to go visit the countries where the women are leaders, or talk to some of the women leaders and find out what is their just most common day, right? Because I just feel like it's got to be different. I also want to share with you guys, Obama is one of my favorites too. I've always found, there's some of his policies I've not been fond of, but I always liked him ethically. I always liked him the way he speaks. I always used to have this weird dream that I was going to have Thanksgiving dinner with him one day. Just sitting at the same table, and everything, because I just truly believed in the fact that he could calm the waters, right? That he had that ability. I hope Biden can too. I want to change the subject a little bit about some positive things though about the world, right? Because we've got innovations in the world that are happening. We're all in still pandemic lockdown. From what I hear, the COVID is still on the rise, and I don't really want to focus a lot on that, but maybe hopefully that people are still taking precautions and accepting that this is a problem. I myself have 3 family members that have tested positive, so I feel like it has really come closer to home. I didn't think, it's not that I never thought it would never happen, right? But it really kind of wakes you up a little bit. It makes us lock down a little bit harder. So just be careful. I want to reach out to the people and say, be careful. We've got Med Friday today, so we'll have doctors coming in and sharing with us some things. And we also have a guest that will come in and share with us some of the new PPE devices that exist today for trying to help solve the problems. But there are innovations. Don't sit at home feeling sorry for yourself, okay? It's easy to do. It's easy to sit at home and put on a few COVID pounds. That's what I've been calling it. But there's the World Leaders Summit. I want to share the video for this. Get out, register for the World Leaders Summit. I'm going to share the URL and domain with you. We have a special code. I want everyone to write this down. It's a coupon code. It's WLS IBMTV. That is a coupon code to attend it. Now, the World Leaders Conference is going to be 10 days. It starts December 6th. Yours truly over here is going to be speaking because he's so innovative. He knows all the great people that are out there innovating things and the influencers. And get yourself involved with that, because the number one reason why people succeed in their businesses or even in life is because they network. And yours truly down there knows that. Yours truly here knows that you got to get out there. You got to network. And we were talking about a story yesterday because he went somewhere and he met someone, one connection to another. Those are what connects and unite the world that we share here. But I want to share the video for the World Leader Summit. People, please go register. Wow. I am so excited. I mean, this just looks so exciting. 10 days of, and I shared that with some of my friends down in Miami and the startup community down there, which to me, Miami has become the next gateway for innovation and startups. Like the government down there just supports the startups so much. It's unbelievable. People kept asking me, why are you going to Miami all the time? And it was because of the warmth and good feeling of startups that were down there and how everybody's united together. And so I've been going down there. I've shared that with them. They're all excited because they're like, oh, that's for me. Oh, that section's for me. So, you know, I shared the website and everything. And I'm going to share the website with people right now. So again, if you go to worldleadersummit.com, and then you key in WLS IBMTV as the coupon code when you register, and you will get to go for free. So again, this is a great way to network, stop sitting around feeling sorry for yourself during the lockdown. Use this time for good time. I've actually been writing books and using my downtime for writing and composing some financial projections for businesses. It's easy to get caught into that downward spin. One of the other things too, Ben and Steve, is like so many things that are innovating today. One of my major concerns is our environment, right? Food, sustainability, right? That's very important in our life. And one of the biggest concerns I've had, well, two actually, is the coral reefs, right? Because if the coral reefs die, we really lose our sustainability. We lose our oxygen. And the other is honeybees, right? Honeybees, to me, are probably one of the most important part of our ecosystem, right? If we lose them, if they go extinct on us, which, you know, people are truly starting to believe that they are going to go extinct on us. And I'm going to share with you the reason why I'm afraid of this is, I know without the honeybees, your fruit won't produce. They literally, truly do the honest, good pollinating. And if you try to pollinate yourself and you're not good at it, you're going to mess up your plants. You're going to get some cross pollinations and some really weird fruit. So, and the reason why I know this is I'm a gardener. That's, I guess, my hobby. I'm not like the best gardener in the world, and to me, it's just a challenge, and I love it. But we didn't have any honeybees this year. The first time in 40 years, the first time 100 years on this property, we didn't have any honeybees. And that was very concerning to me. So we had to try to self-pollinate the plants, and we are trying to, our neighbors had to kind of like, it's unusual how we do it, but get honeybees drawn back in, and they were managed to do it. And so they're sharing their resources with us for next year so that we can draw the honeybees back in. But the problem isn't that the honeybees are just disappearing. You know, they're becoming disease ridden, probably from the smog that didn't help, but also they have their own predators that are getting into the larvae. But something innovating happened because of this. You know, whenever there's a problem, somebody always finds a solution. And guess how Japan is pollinating their flower or their plants? You want to hear?
Yeah.
So here's what's interesting. They went out trying to use little bitty mini drones. How cool is that, right? So, but what happened is when the drone got real close, guess what? It chopped up the flower. That wasn't good. So they innovated drones that go around and they produce a bubble, like a soap bubble, with a certain means to pollinate the flowers. So the drone goes around and picks up certain pollen, and then it develops a bubble, and then it drops the pollen. Is that cool?
That's very cool. Yeah.
What a sustainable product. I don't want to replace bees with drones. I really don't. Yeah. I really, really love bees. I love nature, and I don't want us to cause nature to go extinct. So I hope by innovating this artificial intelligent means of pollinating, I don't want them to make bees go away. I just thought that was cool. But there's, you know, and with the World Leader Summit going, I'm wondering if those guys are going to show up, right? So
I think these guys
I
are
worked with the Japanese for years, and so they get really creative at times. But do you guys know of any recent cool innovations that are happening?
Too many.
Yeah, I know a lot. I mean, I think within North Carolina, I know that our university here, NC State, there's a lot of really good innovation going on in food processing, manufacturing,
Mhm.
ag tech, which I think would be a great opportunity to partner with universities and leaders around the world to help produce more food, for which is a big problem, right?
Mhm.
There's always innovations in sustainability, renewable energy, looking at electric vehicles and these kinds of things. And even in cities, we have a lot of sustainability initiatives now. That's become a very important part for cities and towns in the United States to have sustainability initiatives. So I think there's always, I probably don't know as much as Ben, but I think the fact that John Kerry is now going to be the climate czar, I think that's a good thing that the United States is making a part of the national security plan. Where President Biden is putting John Kerry and former Secretary of State. So that I think will be good for former Secretary of State Kerry to be able to reach out to the rest of the world and explore where innovations could fit into a sustainability strategy that's global, right?
Hmm.
That affects climate change. I think we have to take the problem seriously if we're going to come up with solutions, right? I mean, that's
Exactly.
so. Kimberly, I'm excited about those innovation
Well,
opportunities.
one of the things I love about NC State is, that we are known as one of the world leaders in computer engineering, right? They were the first to implement the computers on their campuses the way that they did. I remember the days of punch cards, and they now have access to the quantum computer, right? They've always had access to Watson, but IBM turned over access last year, I think it was. I was at the ribbon cutting for the quantum computer. So, but they're also, a lot of people don't know this, known for agriculture, like their agriculture. So when you kind of mix the two, you kind of hope that somehow or another we solve these problems. Something a lot of people don't know, right? We kind of put, a lot of us think agriculture at the bottom of the food chain in businesses, but the U.S. alone is expected to invest $10.23 billion by 2025. So yeah, so for on a global, that's what they estimate will be invested in agriculture. That's a lot of money.
Yep.
So, it's not exactly the bottom of the food chain in industries, but I don't think it gets enough love because it's probably one of the most difficult resources to produce. You just can't push a button and food just 3D prints. Well, it does.
Yeah.
But,
Exactly. That's the yeah. No, because from the impact investment point of view, food is one of the most important. Food and agri-tech
Yes,
is
it
the
is.
most important, and it's during the COVID time also it has been doing quite well. This performance and everything is doing quite well. So
Well, got it.
Gotta be.
even in India, if you look at it, because India has the capacity to produce not only food for itself, but around, I mean, it's, I think, the world's biggest food producer if it does it properly.
Mhm.
But it's still, there is so much place for improvement
No, the
in the
farmers,
logistics, in the infrastructure.
the
I think,
farming. Yeah,
yeah, exactly. I don't know the exact number, like 60% of the food goes waste or something,
yeah,
because, and that's can be easily avoided. It's just a matter of, and that's where IT plays a big role.
and the
And it
Indian
is,
farm. Yeah, and the Indian farmers have been really hit
yeah,
hard. The rural farmer. So
exactly.
that may be where we need to help.
With
That's where I think there's partnering opportunities between U.S. and India and other countries like
And,
with
that.
the
and many IT companies are coming up in this, and they are really supporting and helping. Amazing companies are coming up. So we are very well aware of these kind of innovative technologies and innovative solutions coming for
I
the
would like to
farmers.
see better rural communities with India because I know that out in the rural area, they have to travel so far to get medical care. They have to travel so far to get
Yeah.
any of the resources that they really could need to help benefit them, and maybe even getting broadband connectivity. So I talked with Ankit about this a few times. It'd be nice to develop like rural pod communities in the India to help them develop in the rural areas, right? So that they have these sustainable resources at their fingertips instead of having to travel so far for help. The other thing that I would like to see with India is to help solve the problem of stopping them from burning their fields every year.
Yeah,
because that has caused a huge pollution problem where you guys had your air, or India had their air clean. And in one fell swoop of burning the crops, it just destroyed everything that happened during COVID to clean the air. So I would like to see a solution to that. Like, let's get the farmers in the world together to figure out how do we clean out the fields without burning them. And there's got to be a better way, because when you burn the fields, you also burn bees, you burn the other parts of nature that you need to progress culture. But it's what are your thoughts on this, Ben?
We have a couple of very innovative companies who are now working at it in India, especially. For example, they're collecting how do you call it in the English world? It's called the leftover from the agriculture. That's what the farmers burn. They're using this leftover to convert it into either energy or convert it into animal fodder. So there are very innovative companies and things, but they still do not have the resources all the time to work on it. But we are helping them and we are investing in them.
Good, because that they are probably going to continue to be the largest food producer of the world. Like they
have the capacity to do that.
Yes, they do.
Whether they reach it or not, that's a different story. But India has the capacity to become the world's largest food producer. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's better to be a food producer than a gas and oil producer. I think.
Yeah.
And I think these kinds of partnerships, for those of you listening in India, I think that's where there's a great opportunity for Prime Minister Modi and a Biden administration. They are talking where those collaboration are between the world's largest democracy and the world's oldest democracy. And I think it's in commerce, it's in trade, foreign direct investment. Indian multinationals are investing in North Carolina, like Infosys, HCL, but it also could be vice versa, the exchange of data and information between universities, right? Which I think is key to this.
So, Ben, you've got some news and information about a climate change.
So what I just wanted to know before we finish, on 15th, we have the head of the European Investment Bank and the chairman of the European Climate Foundation. And also, it's not on the list yet, the former Prime Minister of Netherlands, who is now leading the DSGC, that's the Dutch Sustainable Growth Company. So there are 8 biggest multinationals based out of Netherlands. So they're coming together. So for 2 hours, we are going to have a discussion on investment flows. And companies or businesses who are looking for investments and who are doing something which is directly or indirectly involved with climate change are most welcome to come and join. It will be on the web, but they are most welcome to come and join, because there's, I think, a European Investment Bank has put, I don't know the exact number, something like $1.2 trillion, 1.2 trillion euros for climate change related technologies and innovations and businesses. And so have the other, so there's massive funds available for businesses. And this money is not only for Europe, but it's for all over the world, mainly for emerging markets. That's where the main sector is, but for climate change related technologies.
So do you have a domain where people can go and find this? Can you send that to me? And we'll talk about this.
You should find it on our website, but I have to see if the website is updated or not.
Okay.
I can show it to you. Can I have do you have a
share screen at the bottom?
Share screen? Oh, yeah. How do I do that?
Let's see.
Oh, yes.
There you go.
Yeah. Do you see it now?
Yeah, just give me a second. There we go. Wow. Okay.
It looks awful, but
awesome.
No, it's bright and cheerful. I love it. December 15th, 5 p.m. CET time. What we'll do is we'll get a little ad of this going so I can play this. And can we just register?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, okay. I'll send you the link and everything. I think they're working at it to make it, because also the Prime Minister of Netherlands, he just called me today afternoon confirming his presence. So his name also has to be now added to this list, to the two.
Oh,
so there will
wow.
be 3 of them.
That's exciting.
Because he has the financial resources of 8 of the biggest Dutch multinationals. So if you go on the website of them, it is called dsgc.nl. You will find the 8 companies who are the members of that.
Okay. So we'll definitely do that. We'll get a copy of this so that I can post it and share it on our shows. We're at the top of the hour. Ben, thank you so much for sharing that with us and joining us today on the World Edition News. Steve, it's always a pleasure to see you. Look forward to seeing you next Monday. Everyone, take care and have a blessed weekend. Don't forget to watch us later today for Med Friday and Financial Friday. And we've got a new show starting real soon that I think you guys are going to like. But definitely enjoy your weekend, people. Be careful out there because COVID's still on the rise. Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.